Sunday marked the 50th about the local connection that we have at either end and white centers with a single maple leaf. The familiar form we know today, national flag. And as we celebrate the 50th anniversary of the symbol of Canada, just meeting in, I'll ask for a motion to
moved by Councillor Neal, second by Councillor Hutchison, that Councillor Riley.
please vote. A motion. So it's moved by Councillor George, bylaw 2014.
I have a conflict in casino as my son.
So Councillor Shell has logged vote.
The Corporation of the City of Kingston. In the matter of Clause 2 is employed by home-based housing.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other declaration, we do have. Okay, moving on to recovery. Extended to Jeremy Wallace, payroll Nadine McGall. On February, Joan will be greatly missed by her professor at Queen's Faculty of Education. Here with the John Howard Society, the community have been great, and he by Councillor Stroud that the best served as an alderman in 1970. All the best with her recovery. For report number 18 from the. So there are a number. Any other like age separation?
I would like to hear it.
Item C, agreement McKee Lot Parking Program, tenant amenities. Problem. So we'll take a 5-minute recess. So we will call the vote on all of the items from Report 18 that have not been separated. So that was items B, C, D, E, F, G, and L. Please vote. And that carries. Okay, so on to the separated items. The first was item A. Item A is the St. Lawrence College request for noise exemption. Councillor Schell.
The councillor in Portsmouth, I actually have two sports fields, one that belongs to Queens and one that belongs to St. Lawrence in the district. And when St. Lawrence College decided that they wanted to put lights in their field, which is what Queens had done a few years ago on theirs, and asked for a noise exemption, I suggested that after we had learned from the Queens experience, it would be a very good idea to work very hard to make sure the neighborhood was completely on side with this plan to put in lights and ask for a noise exemption. And I thought that the management of St. Lawrence did an incredible job of making sure that all the neighborhood had received notes in their mailbox to let them know what the proposal was, how it might affect them, and gave them two public opportunities to come to the college and look at the plans and speak and discuss any worries that they might have. And they really didn't get anyone. They had done such a good job of notifying the neighborhood and letting people know that they understood that if there were any problems, St. Lawrence would support this, the Women's Soccer League motion. Thank you.
I played many times on the field, although I acknowledge the requirement that necessitates Clause 2. It's for the Women's Soccer League, which I believe plays Friday nights and the games go late, and if it was 9 o'clock, they would have to find another field, or they wouldn't be able to play. However, this puts me in a dilemma because we asked for the same treatment, lights on their field, because Queens did, and so now we're going to demand anything that we offer to St. Lawrence. So if we say 10 o'clock 25 times a year to St. Lawrence, Queens will ask for the same, if not more. And just to put that into perspective, the soccer season, I believe, is about 15 weeks long, and so the Friday night games might be, excuse me, necessary for 13 or 14 weeks, and they're asking for 25, which could actually potentially mean in the summer season 2 nights a week of noise exemption until 10, because the season is quite short. And if it went from beginning of June to end of October, it would be, that's 5 months, five times a week, or 5 times a month, so more than once a week. It seems like an excessive amount. At the very least, we need to consider a lesser amendment here. Just my simple, drastic, but my simple for all of the sports.
The second clause, rather than going through the process of amending it, so you can have a chance then to vote yes on the other clauses and you can vote no.
Yes. I had an opportunity to talk to the district councillor about this, and it seems apparent to me that St. Lawrence College are acting very appropriately in the whole process that was followed. I know they have the 20/20 hindsight of the kind of single trial conditioning that Queens had to go through by making decisions without consultation. But I support this particular noise exemption request because I think St. Lawrence have gone about this in a very, very appropriate way and did consult with the neighborhood, did consult with the community, did look at what ended up, I think, as best practices in large part on West Campus. So I'll be supporting this recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Hutchison.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was a bit concerned about this for the same reasons that Councillor Stroud was concerned about. And because we went through this whole wrangle with Queens, and particularly around lighting, which is a secondary part of this report here. My concern is that there is no comparison given in this report, which is often the case in noise exemption reports. If we get them on the highway, bylaw will give us a report saying this is what you've done in the past, this is how long it lasts, and these are the exemptions, and you know that you're more or less consistent with what you've decided or other councils have decided in the past. And I don't see that here. So my question to staff is how is the agreement with Queens different from this?
Who would like to tackle that? Commissioner Hurdle?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I may not have all the information. Actually, I don't have all the information on the Queen's noise exemption with me tonight. But I do know that there are obviously differences between what is being proposed at St. Lawrence and what Queens had. Queens had things like such as the playing of the national anthem and other things too that they were requesting to do during their games. Queens also has artificial turf field, which can take on a lot more play and usage than natural. So there are some differences versus this one is strictly looking at noise.
So part of my concern is so my question is through the appeals committee with Queens as the template for the lighting for this field, which I note is not in, doesn't have any berms, isn't in a shallow bowl, unlike the Queens facility, which sheltered the neighborhoods from light. So will we be using the template, because special light guards had to be designed for Queens to protect the neighborhoods around?
Commissioner Hurdle?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the first thing I think I'm going to say is that obviously the site plan with this particular site plan is not part of this particular recommendation tonight in terms of noise exemption. But we wanted to include it in the report to council, so council is aware that there is that process going on. Site plan is, as you know, delegated to staff, and we do look at all of the requirements that are to be met under the site plan. To say that it's going to be the same template as the Queen's situation, I don't think that it would be, because it's a different site, so we would have to look at what's applicable on that site.
I'll just say I have some reservations about this because, as I say, usually people don't realize what they've got until it's right in front of them and what they're going to be presented with and what it's going to really mean to them. And so if we pass this, then we'll just have to see whether it comes back to us in some form. And so I think I will support Councillor Stroud in his request about the 25 occurrences in the calendar year. And I do wish that this had shown us what the comparison was, because they will play off of each other.
I think just quickly, I appreciate what Councillor Schell has gone through, and I think that was the proper way to handle this application. And she's done everything that she can, as well as staff and St. Lawrence as well. And I don't think we should be sitting here assuming that there are going to be certain issues that may or may not come about. If we put this in place and over a period of time, complaints are brought to the attention of our staff, they can certainly bring a recommendation back to us that this be looked at again and that potential amendments be made to the times in which the whistles are allowed to blow and that type of thing. I just hate it when this continues to happen, that they've done their due diligence, they've gone out, they're reporting back, and then we're trying to ascertain what might happen. there may be a number of things that may happen, but if I had a crystal ball, that would be great. I wouldn't be sitting here. I'd be somewhere down south with my millions from 649. But I think we just have to that option for concerns that may come up over the next seasonal neighborhood, and we'll deal with it at that time.
Is there anybody else? Councillor Turner.
Thank you. Isn't there a yearly review on the whistles being blown? Or a yearly review on this amendment, and they're going to review it once a year and decide whether to go forward with it?
Ms. Agnew?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So a couple of pieces of information that I think may be helpful for council. Number one is that this is not introducing a new form of land use into the community. This field has actually been in use by St. Lawrence College for, I would say, nearly a decade. The same patterns of use of the facility. What the difference is that it's no longer operated in conjunction with the city of Kingston, which has precipitated the need to look at the noise exemption. So the pattern of use on the field has existed in the location at that community for a long time, and to the best of my knowledge, there haven't been any bylaw complaints with respect to noise being a nuisance in that community. So I wanted to offer that up. And in terms of the review, a complaint-driven at the pattern that's there, landowner, but it's not a
with this process. So I think moving with this, I support it. I think we should allow them to play soccer till 10 p.m. or whatever activities they have so that our community can stay active. Thank you.
Councillor Candon.
Thank you. Through your worship, in a past life, soccer was a huge part of my life, and I probably played against Councillor Stroud on that same field. Normally, I think that I'm usually a big stickler on fairness and equality, except when it comes to soccer fields. I know that there's a very limited amount of field space in the city, and a lot of times when games get rained out and all these other things, people have a lot of the soccer community and sports community has a lot of difficulty filling spaces because there's only a limited amount of fields and times after work and so on and so forth. Since nobody is complaining as of yet that there's an issue, then certain fields should be allowed to be open. If other fields want to be open at a certain point and there's a lot of backlash because of that, I don't necessarily feel as though all soccer fields should be treated equally. So I will be supporting this motion.
Okay. Seeing no other speakers on my list, we will call the vote, but we will separate Clause 2, which is that St. Lawrence College is also permitted an exemption until 10 p.m. for a total of 25 occurrences in a calendar year. So we will vote on the balance of the recommendation first. So everything except for Clause 2. Please vote. And that carries. And now we'll vote on Clause 2. Please vote. Moving on to Agreement Alma Mater Society of
Resources for the city, while expanding the services that we are providing and having them being paid for in part or in whole by another institution. In this case, we have 3 bus routes. There are lots of other people who may want to deal core services of the city. And
just quickly, I believe that this was happening in the 90s. Excellent program, though, because people complain because they think of it as a perk to students, but that's a substantial amount of money that comes from the AMS to our transit authority that makes our buses run more efficiently and more regularly because of the ridership. So I think it's an excellent opportunity. And I was going to raise a point of order. I think we skipped H, which I had separated, but that's fine, we can
Thank
do
you.
a reverse alphabet.
Deputy Mayor, thank you for that point of order. You're absolutely right. So we will come back to item H. Thank you. Anybody else on item I? Councillor Stroud.
Also very quickly, just also to point out and further to Deputy Mayor's comments, thank you, Your Worship, about the AMS and the fees. They actually have a debate on this at the AMS on a fairly regular basis about whether or not they should continue to contribute to this idea, and that happened again this year, and the students do support the idea. They did have the debate and also support the idea. So there's this is a long-standing program going back at least to 1987 that I know of that has had the consistent support of the university as well since that time. So I'll be wholeheartedly supporting it.
Okay, we'll call the vote. And that carries. Back to item H, distribution of lands east of 77 Macaulay Street to the Limestone District School Board.
Yes,
Deputy Mayor.
thank you. I just had a question of staff because I know we always hear when we talk about potential lands that we may be trying to acquire in that whole process of divestment. And I'm curious that for transferred lands from school boards to municipalities or vice versa. I'm just wondering if I could have an explanation for the $1 for half an acre. And I'm just curious, I'm perfectly willing to support this. What benefits are there to the community, to the neighborhood in whole for this transfer of land? So that's probably a question for our land people and for our commissioner, but thank you.
Mr. Hugenboss.
Yeah. Through you, Your Worship, yes, we do talk about fair market value, but council's in its rights to transfer this land to a public agency for $1. And when we do talk about fair market value, this particular property is significantly encumbered by a right-of-way in the school board's name. So to do anything on the property, you would need to accommodate their right of use of the property, and they have been used for parking and access to the rest of their site. So very difficult to find a way around developing the site and accommodating their use of the lands, which they are fully in rights to do. And I can turn it over to Ms. Hurdle to answer the other question.
Commissioner.
I mean, aside from the options or non-optionship to make our park project of the community center on that site. So as council is probably aware, it's part of one project that we are applying.
I can accept this as the rare exception to the rule of market value. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to perhaps add something to the Councillor Neal's concerns about value to the community, I think, as Commissioner Hurl has alluded to, the fact that we're, in a sense, but also facilitating the development of this incredible community center and redevelopment of Shannon Park, which will have significant outstanding value to not only the local community, but I think the city as a whole. And it's been, this community center has been, the plans have been put together through great public consultation and much effort on behalf of the city staff and the school board. So I certainly accept and support this decision to provide the land needed. Thank you.
Okay, we'll call the vote. And that carries. Item J, Corporate Data Center Project. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, just a couple of questions to staff around this project. It looks like we've been in need of modernizing where we store our emergency equipment for emergency communications, and so this is a timely effort, but I just wanted to ask if we have any need for future data centers such as this. We're taking on a lot of software. We've approved several forms of software, including land management software in the last 6 months. Is this, are we going to have to create more data centers within the city to accommodate future data use by the city? Is this big enough?
Commissioner Leger.
Through your worship, I'll begin, then I'll pass it over to Mr. Schaefer sitting beside me. He's the manager of IS&T. This is a secondary data center, so what we're doing for this one in particular is moving equipment from Woodbine Road to O'Connor Drive, and also centralizing some of the computer software and server in one centralized room with proper environment at O'Connor Drive. That's for the data, and it's a backup center. I'll turn it over to Mr. Schaefer to address whether or not we need additional space and space configuration environment for other data centers for the City of Kingston.
Thank you, Dennis, through your worship. So this improvement will consolidate, as Dennis pointed out, at Woodbine for the Emergency Operations Center. So this infrastructure improvement will allow the Emergency Operations Center to function in a completely standalone basis based on its generator and the UPS that's being provisioned. He still will be looking to improve the conditions of it.
Just a follow-up question, 2 questions. One, to use that sort of thing, if this already could provide to us.
Through your worship, Information Officer, Mr. Possibly 1211 John, there are risk assessments that we're undertaking at this point in time on a primary data center. We did explore many years ago whether or not we could purchase service and have it hosted by somebody else, and at that point in time we had some significant cost and access issues which didn't permit us to explore that. I'm not sure at this point in time whether or not IS&T will be exploring
that. Thank you. It seems that there might be an opportunity in-house looking forward. Not with this motion, I'll support it, seems necessary, but looking forward, we want to keep an eye on opportunities for improving data storage. We have a great fiber network in the city hosted by Utilities Kingston, and maybe there's something that we can leverage in terms of that network and the rising need for not just us but other organizations within our borders to have a data center. So thank you very much. I'll be supporting this motion.
Okay, we'll call the vote. And that carries. Item K, Canadian Heritage Contribution Agreement through the Commemorate Canada program, Sir John A. Macdonald Bicentennial. Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple of questions. I guess, first of all, considering the timing, I know there are lots of delays. I'm very happy to see, first of all, that there's the potential to receive this funding. However, I'm a little bit concerned with the amount. Is the 170,000, it's up to 170,000 and extending throughout the year, throughout the year of 2015, as I understand it. So is that amount, I guess, how certain is it that that would be the contribution, first of all? And maybe I'll follow up from there.
Mr. Wigginton.
Through you, Your Worship, we made an application for twice that amount of money, and this is what they came back and approved. So what they're requiring from us once the contribution agreement gets signed is a number of cash funding specific aspects of the following their requirements in terms of reporting on of that amount, as long as we're meeting.
Thank you. So I guess to disclose, as a former employee of another organization that received federal funding to promote the bicentennial of the first Prime Minister here in Kingston and across the country, I'm curious about the partnerships that were to be pursued and whether or not those are ongoing partnerships. And mainly my interest is in whether or not there could be efficiencies generated through collaboration, and whether that would extend the benefit of the work that's been done, but also extend the life of the tourism organizations, for example, who have been benefiting from this work, or any nonprofits involved as well.
Through your worship, if I'm understanding the question correctly, there's certainly a number of different activities going on in the city of Kingston in relation to the bicentennial. So this funding is specific to what council approved back in November 2013 as city-led initiatives. But we are also working in tandem with a number of different groups throughout the community to extend the life of different initiatives. For example, the Kingston Accommodation Partners Canada Comes Home initiative. In reference to Salon Theatre, for example, that's been pursuing its own programming, as you referenced, they've been funded through council's support as well as other levels of government granting. So there's things happening all across the community, and so the best opportunities we can pursue is to make sure that people are able to build on and benefit from the range of things that are happening, but I'm not sure that this funding would be applicable to help other groups because it is specific to what the city has planned.
Commissioner Beach?
Just to follow, that was done in November 19th, 2013. So in that report, it actually lists the initiatives and the partner funding that we're looking for. So we're basically following up on this council-approved plan, and we've been able to get partner funding from a variety of different, the tour CAP tourism group. We've had private sponsorship through some of the events. We've had media sponsorship with the contest that's currently going on now for Leading Change. And we're working on an online program as well as some further events in that would be going on. Some of them are legacy projects, so the database, for instance, and the apps, and those are all collecting partnership funding as well.
Okay, that's helpful. I guess the concern I have is Salon Theatre, who we're referring to, is a former employer, and as I mentioned, we're also funded by the federal government to do similar types of work. So I understand the city has their own objectives and their own areas that are in the agreements that would be funded. I'm mostly interested in knowing whether or not there is sort of a competition happening here with two organizations receiving federal funding, and whether or not any, rather than, much of the work has been done, but whether there overlap, can that be negotiated or mitigated through the continued work that would be funded through this amount.
Commissioner Beach?
So the strategy, when it was developed in 2013, did consult with a number of partners, and we did have the groups come together. So we did, when we had this approved by council, look at what was appropriate for the city to provide and what other partners might provide. So if those groups want to come talk to us about something that they're already working on, one of the initiatives is that we fund Salon Theatre as well, and that continues on through this year. So the idea is not to duplicate, but look at the organizations that are already doing work, and then there's some specific initiatives that were approved by council for us to work on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll call the vote. That carries. Report from the KROC Center.
Thank you, Your Worship. Members of the city-owned event management agreement that basis by us with this on February 3rd, net income from operations from the K-Rock Center. So that's already done as a formality, and the ability for them to make a presentation on 2014 year in operations, 2015 plan, also including a budget both for operating capital purposes. We have in the audience this evening Ms. Lynn Carlotto, who is General Manager for SMG Canada and General Manager at Rogers K-Rock Center, accompanied by Nick DeLuco, who is the Director of Marketing and Events for the Rogers K-Rock Center. At this point in time, I'd like to invite Ms. Carlotto to present the plan and to speak to operations and also to address questions of council. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mayor Patterson, members of City Council. Thank you for giving me the opportunity tonight also to look at 2000 a year, and that is exactly what we strive to do year in and year out. Welcomed through our doors 234,000 fans, primarily to hockey games, which is certainly the greatest number of events that we do. Our Kingston Frontenacs are creating a very exciting environment for hockey fans and really for sports fans to come and find out about how wonderful their game presentation can be and what are games and playoff games. The Subway Super December. So there was a lot of hockey and a lot of sports action and a lot of fun around that. And it was also a really busy year for concerts, 18 concerts, everything from Backstreet Boys to Bare Naked Ladies, Goo Goo Dolls to Il Divo, Headley of events, which is exactly what we strive to do. The purpose of our facility is really not only of the city, but to visit our. In addition to that, from Cirque du Soleil to World Wrestling Entertainment and also Harlem Globetrotters. That's something that we look to build on as well. Other highlights from 2014. Very proud to have again been voted by the Canadian music and broadcast industry as best venue under 8,000 seats. Now, this is in 5 out of the last 6 years. It's really quite an accomplishment for us. It's something that we're very proud of. It's voted on by the folks that run the concert tours in the country. So these are the people that really choose the best of the best. So we're in fine company. In addition to that, this year was one that made me proud in having been selected as 2014 Woman of Influence by Venues Today magazine, which is an industry trade publication. Enhancements to the venue. This was the year for the new video scoreboard. We have incredible capacity now to show terrific video in our facility. In fact, we now have the highest resolution video technology in the Ontario Hockey League. This is great for in-game experience with all of our hockey games. It's also incredible, if anybody was there and you saw Skate Canada, to be able to watch not only the live performances by those athletes, but also to watch the kiss and cry area and watch the scores come up. We have fabulous technology in our building, which is really important to keeping us at that world-class level. And then finally, the Creemore Corner Pub. The corner of Ontario Street and the Tragically Hip Way on the 100 level of the building, when you come in Gate 3, was created more of a pub atmosphere this year, where we put flat screen TVs on the wall. We've created a spot where you can come in, have a beverage, have a snack, meet with your friends, perhaps watch some of the game there before you go to your seat. You can go back and forth. So it's the sort of environment that we really didn't have in the building before, and we found that to be something that people are really embracing. We know from deeper into it in 2014, what you're seeing tickets to concerts, average age, just under 42, most of all over $90,000, median household income. Fans earn $100,000 or more annually, and 65% of them are in the labor force. Again, this is the data from Ticketmaster of the actual people who purchase tickets. So these are the people walking through the door. Let's drill down a little bit deeper in that. Within those audiences, who are these folks? What are the attributes? What are the psychographics that are attached to them? The greatest group that we have in this study is called empty nesters, the same thing. These are folks who have been, they're third-generation Canadians living in the same house for many years. These are people who are very active, strong in the community. They are people who are probably down south right now, people who tend to be snowbirds, and also people who are more apt to get their news through mainstream traditional media. The second most popular audience for us is what's referred to as middle-aged achievers. These are the people that are in their prime earning years. Again, with children, older children, however, owning their own homes, the discretionary income in order to be able to buy event tickets and come visit the facility. The third group, young metro diversity. This group is made up of folks who are also families, younger families, ethnically diverse, high education, very family-centered lifestyle, tech savvy. Now, you see that there's not a great jump between them. So we almost are homogenous in, the 17 to the 14% categories. So those are really the three core groups that we look to reach out to. And then let's get even a little bit deeper. Of those folks, what day of the week do they prefer to come to Rogers K-Rock Center to see concerts? Most popular day is a bit of an odd method. We know that everything's about mobile, right? Everything is about buying tickets on the internet and really being the master of your own ticket. So 50% of our fans are downloading, they're coming to the gate with their phone, or they're doing a print at home and coming in with their hard copy. The traditional souvenir ticket is less and less popular, and I'm sure as time goes on, we'll see that to be even more the case. So let's look at 2015, the year that we're in already. Skate Canada National Championships were such a great experience for us, not only for those of us in the building, but also for the fans, the skaters, the organizers. It was the sort of event that shows just how powerful and successful teamwork can be. It was Tourism Kingston and KEDCO that secured and brought that event interest to Kingston. Together we created the pitch that secured the event, and then it was turned over to us to implement it. We had over 17,000 fans walk through the doors. We know that there were millions of dollars in value of publicity on Kingston through all of the live television broadcasts that went on during that entire week of competition. I actually printed out to read part of it to you, a complimentary email that I received from the competition coordinator for Skate Canada to give you an indication of what the experience was like from their perspective. I wanted to send you a quick note regarding the recently completed event. The event was a huge success. We have received positive feedback from the various key stakeholders, sponsors, TV, spectators, internal guests, and most importantly, the skaters and teams themselves. The success of the event was hugely contributed to the venue, and more specifically, the staff involved. It was a pleasure working with the staff at the Rogers K-Rock Center, as everyone was helpful, accommodating, and courteous throughout. Please pass along on behalf of Skate Canada our thank you and congratulations to all of your staff on a very successful event. So, something that we're very proud to receive, and I was very happy to share with my staff. So, after Skate Canada, on to hockey, and back into the core of our sports season, but of course that also means all of the concerts that make up our year. We know that this is going to be a really busy week for us with Florida-Georgia Line on Friday, Bryan Adams on Saturday, and then back to hockey on Sunday. It's a 24/7 operation. We are switching over from event to event. We are busy all the time. We have crews of people that are coming in on the overnight in order to ready the building for the next event that's coming in. After the events of this weekend, we're going to be looking forward to ZZ Top, Tragically Hip in April, and Journey in July so far. There are more announcements on the way, and there's one that's going to be coming in approximately 2 weeks. Also, I mentioned family entertainment. It's certainly an area that we're looking to build on. This year, we will have in May a Monster Jam, a monster truck event. We haven't had one in a number of years. There has been an enormous amount of positive feedback to us since we've announced this event. So we're looking forward to that. And there are also additional ones that we're looking to bring in. And on top of it, to round out our schedule and the off-season, which is really the warmer months, with events that will keep the building busy when fans of sports and other activities are really kind of outside using the building for business purposes, creating some of our own homegrown events to keep the doors moving and to keep our staff busy. That's our operation for 2014 and 2015, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Deputy Mayor Neal.
Thank you. I just want to congratulate you on Skate Canada. It was great coming in to pick up my mail and seeing some of the skaters warming up in our on our ice surface behind here in their very cold costumes, I'm sure. But I know I've spoken to you before, both privately and here, and our Director of Cultural Services will attest to me always asking this question about the Grand Theatre as well. I guess my main concern is the number of dark days, the number of days when facilities aren't necessarily being used to their full. And I appreciate the statistics that you've brought forward would be helpful, and I'm used to seeing statistics that have comparators. So if you were able to say, in 2013, we had this number of concerts and we had this number of patrons come through our doors, and in 2015, we had this, and in 2016, we had this. And also, if you have targets, I mean, I'm used to looking at statistics with all kinds of organizations that say, this is our budget and this is our actuals. That kind of information, I think, would be relevant and helpful for us to be able to sort out those things. Would you like to comment on any of that? Is that information that I didn't see it in the report when I looked through the report?
Through you, Mayor Pedersen, there is an extensive amount of information in the annual report that is an attachment that is in with your agenda. There is all of our detail from the 2014 season.
Yeah, you realize that. I'm looking for comparators to see how you've grown the business or how you've expanded or reduced the dark days from 2013 to 2014. And that's the data I don't see. And I'm sure if I rummaged around in my basement, I might be able to find the 2013 report, but it would be good to have in front of us.
Let me give you 2 examples right now that I can. In 2013, we had 14 concerts, so we were up 4 concerts this past year. But everything isn't either capacity, so 14, 18 is more. In this case, 18 of fans through the building is one thing to keep in mind. In January, we only had 2 days where the building was dark in our world because of all of the preparation time, the building of sets, et cetera, for Skate Canada. So even if there isn't something on the website that you can buy a ticket to, it doesn't mean that that date is available to book. Because we are really a blank canvas until the event comes in, everything has to get constructed for them. So that really changes what the number of dates we have available to book, depending on what event we have in the building, what we're getting ready for.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate that not all concerts are created equal. But it would be helpful to know that if indeed we increased by 4 concerts, and I think.
The response has been given. Do you have
Thank
any?
you.
Thank you, and through you, Your Worship. I just, in the report, you spoke to the analytics of your ticket buyers that you got through your partnership with Ticketmaster. I just wondered if you could share a couple of the benefits with the rest of council, a couple of the benefits that you saw that directly improved your operation from those analytics that changed the way things worked for.
Really is based on bringing the right events into the building. You want to program on our audience. We can events in different musical acts. So that gives us the raw material that we can say, okay, this is the sort of event that, based on these numbers, would appeal to 35% of our audience because it falls within this age range. So we use it when a promoter calls us and said, I have X act, how do you think they'll do? Because that's always how it starts. And sometimes we have to say, I don't think that's really going to work out here. The worst thing that you can do is overpromise on the ability to sell tickets. Because if you do that, certainly a lack of trust, rightfully so, in the future. So we do get inquiries about certain shows and we say no, and we're saying no based on the numbers and based on what we see our core audience to be.
Thank you. That it seems like a very good market research and audience research in terms of understanding who's coming downtown and who's coming to your events, and there's a lot of value in that. There's a great value in this report here as well, and is there any intention to sort of share with our partners at KEDCO and at the Business Improvement Association some of this information so that our whole city can benefit from it?
We're always collaborative, for sure.
Fabulous, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. I just had a quick question. You mentioned that when promoters call you, is there a mechanism that has been put in place or is being considered to actually have the public tell you more of who they want to see so that you would know the interest is there? So instead of kind of having people contact us, we're actually going out and actively saying we have a demographic of people that would be interested in these types of acts. So is there a mechanism in place or is there something in the works for that?
Yeah. Yes, there is. We are always advocating for additional acts to come to the building. It's not only, it's not an answering the phone sort of arrangement. There's active networking going on all the time where we're lobbying for a lot of names. I will tell you, the general public looks to us to bring in acts that really go to stadiums. You know, you'll hear some of the biggest names in the entertainment industry, and we always say, I would love to be able to bring them here. But we just don't have enough seats to pay the guarantee to lure that artist to come to our building. So, you know, there's plenty of times that I will get input from folks either wanting that act or wanting that act. It's someone who's building, but they're not quite ready to fill enough seats in order for them to break even in our building. In that case, they're probably going to the Grand. You know, we're a great complement to one another in that way. So I hope that answered your question.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Councillor Hutchison.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just looking at your attendance figures that you have here in my general observation that the revenue projection is not that far off other years. Would you say that we've tended to flatline in terms of what the numbers that we're attracting? I'm just looking at the attendance, 234 for 2014, 284 for 2013, 229 for 2010, and some of the years that aren't in that group lower. And I know it goes up and down, and for some of the reasons you gave, I guess the question is, and this isn't a criticism, it's a question got to do with, have we reached some kind of plateau, relative plateau? And do we think we can, or do we have a plan to raise that plateau?
Through you, Mayor Pedersen. It's a dynamic industry. By no means have we flatlined or found a level that will be consistent. Dynamic is the best word. If a calendar year in some occasions went a month later or a month earlier, the numbers would be very different. Events will jump around in the calendar. We have lots of holds, we have lots of attention. A Skate Canada or a Scotties or a tournament, these are all the sorts of numbers that make our annual figures very fluid. So it's very dynamic. By no means have we hit a level that we'll always stay on. We're not going to double it. There has to be a certain realization of what range can we be within, but I don't see this as our top number. So you have to think also of the non-ticketed events where we will have a gala event, or this summer we're going to have a conference come in. Those also will move our numbers, and in ways that we really haven't had a great deal of success in securing those sorts of events up until this point. We are starting to do that now. So there are areas of growth, and we are actively exploring all of the options that we have to bump those numbers up even higher.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Sanik.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one question about our food concession stands. Have they contributed more towards the revenue, or are they still a problem? I know a few years ago we were hoping that people were buying more food and beverages. Has that picked up?
Through you. Actually, this has been a fabulous year on the food and beverage side, and I have to point to really the Kingston Frontenac's games. There are a number of combo meals. We have seen our food and beverage per capita, and we're actually having some meetings right now about redesigns and different selections. We've done some surveying, and we're getting some customer feedback on what other people would like to see, what our fans and our clients would like to see. But the short answer is yes, we have seen growth.
Okay, so Deputy Mayor.
Just one more very quick question. You mentioned guarantee, and it kind of jogged my memory that a few years ago when you were presenting for the contract and we talked a little bit about dark days, you mentioned that risks to bring in concerts, even though you would have to recognize that the guarantee was a bit of a risk, and that you would be willing to do that in order to increase our number of concerts. How has that worked out?
We have done that on a number of occasions. We have brought in some shows that would not have come here otherwise had we not made the commitment for the guarantee, that have been very successful. We've also had shows that have been marginal, that have not covered all of the expenses, where we had to make those additional payments in order to make
successful or not?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so Rogers K-Rock Center 2015. And affordable housing for Ontario. That carries. Report number 20 from the Planning Committee.
Thank you, Mayor Pedersen. I would like to present the Planning Committee report and ask that it be received and adopted. Thank you.
It's moved by Councillor Shell, seconded by Councillor George, that report number 20 from the Planning Committee be received and adopted.
So there are two clauses. Councillor McLaren, so we will separate them, saying that they're, so we'll deal with item number 1 first, change in planning committee start time. Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a young family which I love, and they are at the age in which they still actually enjoy my company. And one of the things that I do like to enjoy with them is my dinner and their dinner together. We do enjoy talking. And if you believe that kids' company is worth, I would prefer that you guys would allow the time for the planning committee to start still. Keep it at 6:30. If you believe that children benefit from having more time with their parents, I hope that you will consider this. If you feel that children learn best from the example of their parents, please don't take this time away from me. And if you realize that making people rush to a meeting a little quicker reduces quality time, then I ask you not to support this. I would prefer very much to be able to spend just a little more time with my kids, and that we start the meetings at 6:30, not at 6. Thank you.
Councillor Osanek.
Thank you, Your Worship. At the committee meeting, I also voted against the start time of 6 o'clock. I think of our 4 standing committees that we have, the most number of people from the public come to planning committee, depending on what's the agenda. And if they do have, young families, and if they work during the day and work until 5 o'clock, 6:30 gives them that extra time to get home and to come to City Hall, to give their opinion and hear the meeting. So,
Deputy Mayor Neal.
Yes, here at the planning committee when we chose 6 o'clock. 6:30 or 6 o'clock. It probably says something about my life. But I can miss rather than voting this down, would an amendment be in order? Or if we vote this down, will it just automatically continue to be 6:30? That was my procedural question.
So, Mr. Clerk, can you answer that?
The proper course of action would be to vote it down.
So then it would remain at 6:30.
This, through you, Your Worship, and thank you, this motion, it sort of comes as a recommendation from the Planning Committee, and yet I'm hearing voices from the Planning Committee dissenting from it, and it puts me in a difficult position as a councillor who doesn't have to attend Planning Committee meetings at the moment, and I wouldn't want to push somebody one way or another, and I would feel the same way in to say, or I also agree with you. The other standing committee, I wasn't sure how that all changed or was different, and the only other reason I would say that a 6 p.m. meeting is because it is a public meeting, and they do tend to go long when they have a packed agenda, and they can go quite late. For people who have young children, that's also important. So I'm still confused. I'm going to have to vote at some point, but I needed to share that with you. Thank you for putting me in this position.
Deputy Mayor, will you take the chair?
I will, and I will recognize you.
Thank you. I will be honest, I did not expect to be debating this particular item. I've heard the arguments back and forth, but I think it is dangerous for us to base our decision on what is most convenient for us. I think it's important to base our decision on what we think is most convenient for the public, given that that is the major component of planning committee. There is a business section that tends to be a much shorter. The vast majority of time on planning committee is holding those public meetings. As was pointed out by council, and there are people that want to come to, and it's numbers. In order to find, I think it's wise to start convincing that it's better for the public.
Thank you, and I return the chair.
Councillor Schell.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. I agree with you. I remember when I started on council and was in a number of committees, missing administrative policies because it started at 5:30, and then Arts and Rec started at 6, and then if I wanted to be at planning, it was 6:30. And I gather that many of these changed over the years if a group on one committee said half an hour later would be better. It became ad hoc. This was partly staff would like to rationalize some of these start times as well. And I thought 6 o'clock seemed quite reasonable, particularly as you say, the meetings can go on very long. 6 o'clock seems like a reasonable time for people to be able to come. And the public meetings, boy, if you want to come, you'll be here. That's the way it goes. So I'm quite content with 6 o'clock. It's good for staff, and I think it's good for the public, and I think we can make it. It's a couple of times a month. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hutchison.
The public is not happy. That's why. I don't know. I've known plenty. I haven't heard. 6:30 for the 8 going on 9 years I've on council, and it was, I think, 6:30 before that, although I look at Councillor George to see if that's true or not. He can't remember, so lucky him. So, I was kind of wondering, I can understand that some people really like to standardize things, but if there's other reasons for not, then why bother? It's, I don't know. 6 o'clock would be okay for me because my problem was that meeting started at 5:30 and my work technically doesn't end until 5:30, so that made it kind of difficult. So I understand what it's like to be pressured to meet certain times, but if there's any evidence, I'd like to hear it. Thank you.
Councillor Bowman.
Conflicted on this one just because, again, the recommendation comes from planning committee. Certain people do work later, and so to allude to what Councillor Hutchison said there, convenient for others. So without that, as there hasn't been too many complaints from the public about the existing time, I guess I'll go with the time that it's currently at. So I'll be voting against this, I guess. Thank you, Your Worship.
So it looks like every single member of council wants to speak to this particular item. Next is Councillor George.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have a number of committees that the public are more than welcome to attend, and they do attend to speak to an issue of importance to them. They make an effort to be there, and they start at 5:30, a lot of them. Some of them start at 6:30, and I've been on committees that we've had them start mid-afternoon throughout, but people always find a way to be there when it's of importance to them. And I agree with staff, having been on planning committee for many years over the terms, it tends to go on for quite a length of time, and it would kind of be nice if you could wrap up and get people out of there at a reasonable time. I would prefer the 6 o'clock start myself. I know many years ago, and I've always said to people, when you put your name forward to be a member of council, when you're selecting the committees that you want to be on, you need to do so in considering how you manage your time with your families and such. And I did that for many years, coaching umpteen ball teams and hockey teams and everything else. And you get run ragged, so I can understand where Councillor McLaren and Councillor Bowman would be coming from. But I think given what staff had to say at the planning committee meeting, I would still prefer to at least give the 6 o'clock a try and see how we can proceed further with the number of public meetings that we have and getting people out of there at a decent hour.
Thank you, Councillor Stroud.
Thank you. I'm partly want to speak so I can stand up and warm up a bit. Your Worship, I think that this is one of those things where it's almost like a hung jury, like Richard, Councillor Allen was saying, that it's difficult to know what to do, and you can't abstain. You have to vote yes or no. I think that I agree with Councillor Bowman that not knowing really what the public wants, unless we have a way of polling them, for this half-hour difference. We really have some discussion. Again, really, I think, and vote it down. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that wishes to speak? Seeing none, we'll call the question. And that loses by a vote of 6 to law amendment 11 William Street. And that carries. Report 21 from the Arts, Recreation, and Community Policies Committee.
It is my pleasure to present Report 21 of the Arts, Recreation, Community Policies Committee for consideration by Council. Moved by myself, Councillor Hutchison, seconded by Councillor Sanek. Thank you.
So it's moved by Councillor Hutchison, seconded by Councillor Osanek, that report number 21 from the Arts, Recreation, and Community Policies Committee be received and adopted.
So there are two clauses. Would anyone like either of them separated? Okay, so I see a hand, so we will vote on them separately. So Clause 1 is a revised Kingston Arts Council plan for administration of the arts funding for the Corporation City of Kingston Arts Fund in 2015. Mayor Neal.
Keep pushing the wrong buttons today. I really appreciate how promptly this came back to council, because it was a motion that we brought forward just a couple of meetings ago. My question was, like most working groups, will this be going through some kind of a public call for people requesting, and would it go through a nominations committee, or will the how will the criteria for the working group be established? Is this a trick question? I should have emailed this question in before. Perhaps, if you could just explain what your intentions are on this particular motion.
Mr. Wigginton.
Through you, Your Worship. The plan at this point is that when we do the research to work through what has already asserted itself as a practice in the City of Ottawa that was identified, and we've had huge interest from the community, that we'll need to establish some sort of mechanism for identifying who can be involved in an equitable manner, because there will probably be more interest to get those people involved.
Will this working group just an interest or whatever
of individual, sort of a call out, as well as
that working group? I think that works to choose how to.
Worship, it is my pleasure to present on Thursday, February 5th. It has been duly moved and seconded.
So it's moved by Councillor Holland, seconded by Councillor Candon. The report number 22 from the Municipal Accessibility Advisory Committee be received and adopted.
There's just the one clause, City of Kingston Multi-Year Accessibility Plan 2014 Year-End Report. We'll call the vote. Limited Eastern Mainline communities that have resided in the knowledge that this is historically First Nation. It resolved that council requests criminalized and read aloud by the mayor. Deputy Mayor Neal.
Thank you. This indeed is a standard practice in many, many municipalities, particularly out west, but increasingly in Ontario as well. And I know that we've done it periodically in a kind of ad hoc way. I know the mayor has increasingly, if you go to conferences, our history, our staff, if they consult with the community, and to bring back a declaration that can be shared by the city. I'm sure it wouldn't be any more than a 90-second kind of presentation that at our inaugural meeting. So this isn't, I don't think in any way is this some kind of slippery slope. This is, all we're doing is trying to find a way to take something that we're doing that I think is a great initiative that we're now doing only on an ad hoc basis, and to be able to do it in a more routine basis so that our community can see that we respect the historical realities of the greater Kingston area. And so I'm hoping, my understanding, having spoken to staff before this meeting, that indeed any motion, the wording of any declaration will come back to council, and we'll have an opportunity to look at it and choose whether it is that, I know a word there, but I know it's a political decision, but they very much seem supportive of this idea and respectful of the fact that we've done it in the past. And this is just a way of making it more routine and not a kind of ad hoc novelty that only gets done occasionally. So I reserve the right to speak last to this as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stroud.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just to call everyone's attention to our first inaugural meeting when the smudging ceremony happened, and Mr. Paul Carl here performed the smudging. He describes himself as a traditional man. These things are done for respect, and my understanding of the smudging was it added an element of spirituality as well, traditional spiritual presence and approach to our first meeting. And I think this is a natural segue, very important. And before, perhaps there is no opposition, but before we vote on it, it should be clear that it's a very simple motion. Cultural Services is directed to consult with First Nations to come up with a brief statement that is said at the beginning of public meetings as a sign of respect to those who came before us and who we continue in another way. And I hope to have your support. Thank you.
5 years ago, I had the to a human rights. The person who took my place in my classroom took it down that says, "We are all treaties people." And that's something I think we should remember. We think of treaty peoples as First Nations, but there are 2 signatures to every treaty. And we should respect and recognize the fact that we are in a historical, traditional partnership with First Nations. And I think this is just a respectful way of doing so. Thank you.
Thank you. We will call the vote. That carries. Motion 2, moved by Councillor George, seconded by Mayor Patterson. Whereas the Association of Municipalities of Ontario is seeking nominations to their Waste Management Task Force, and whereas nominations to this AMO Task Force must be supported by a council motion which indicates the financial support of that council, whereas Councillor Neal has expressed an interest in being considered for this committee with experience as chair of the city's Environment, Infrastructure and Transportation Policies Committee, therefore be resolved that the Council of the City of Kingston nominates Councillor Jim Neal for appointment to the AMO Waste Management Task Force, and that the City of Kingston agrees to cover the travel expenses related to attending the task force meetings. Is there anyone that wishes to speak? Councillor George?
Just very briefly, when Councillor Neal approached me on this, I felt that I could definitely support him in this case. I just wanted to further add that many years ago, actually, Councillor Neal and I served on the CART board. He representing the city, I represented the township at the time, so I know he goes way back in waste management decisions that have been made on behalf of the former townships and the city of Kingston now. So I'd like to get your resume in and this motion.
Okay, we will call the vote. Chair for the next motion.
I will indeed. Councillor Camden, bylaw, as amended, Ontario Street, unless council strategic plan that council waive bylaw number 2010-1, as amended in order to hold the council strategic planning sessions on Monday, April 30th, business, Queen's University, Cuba. But as the mover, you have the right to speak.
In case anybody has
Further comments or
I don't think it is considered a particularly exciting why we chose this.
Yes, I recognize the clerk.
We were approached by Queens to utilize the facility free of charge. That's the first part of it. We did do a site inspection. It is accessible, and there's adequate parking available as well.
I'll just say that I think Portsmouth Olympic Harbor would be a better choice. Or even the Donald Gordon Center where we met before. I just don't see particularly...
This wants to speak.
If you could, because I'm not familiar with, is there adequate reservation, which...
Thank you. I thought I would just mention that, and so we're only talking about a choice between two particular locations at Queen's, one that's free and one that would come with a fee. So it seems reasonable to choose a location that's free. Queen's has offered that space in the spirit of partnership, and I think that we should take them up on that offer. Thank you.
Thank you, and I will return the chair.
Thank you. Ways and means in which better city and school board relations may benefit may include but not be limited to systemic operational and capital funding efficiencies and cost savings, space and program development, and sharing in the areas of recreation, housing, community hubs, government and agency services, business and economic development such as space for microbusinesses, artisans, artists, and alternative businesses, and health, food and furniture, home care and senior care, and therefore be it resolved that City Council invite the Limestone District School Board to establish a joint Kingston Limestone Advisory Working Group, the CLAG, to explore and prioritize projects for collaboration and cooperation based on mutually identified and supported priorities and goals, and that the CLAG consist of councillors, trustees, and senior staff as mutually agreed to by both organizations, and that the staff report back to council with a recommendation about how the CLAG will be structured and how it will carry out its business by or before the May 19th, 2015 council meeting. And I'm sorry if I mispronounced the acronym, or if there was some thought behind that would actually roll off the tongue. So anyways, Councillor Hutchison, do you want to speak?
I don't think anyone tried to pronounce it before you, so you're in the clear. I would have said clog, something like that. Anyway, the point was to get the two organizations in the same acronym. And that's not the important part of this motion, of course. This motion builds on an existing long-standing relationship regarding recreational uses, emergency management, use of schools, before and after school childcare centers, with the city as a service manager, and other initiatives we've had with the school board and sometimes boards. And for example, we just discussed tonight the Rideau Heights Community Hub. But there's others. The R.G. St. Clair Public School is a well-used small school with summer use of recreational space with children and adults alike. Queens bought the Victoria Public School and realized that. Cogeco's in the Sir John A. Macdonald Public School, not now, the one that was John A. Macdonald before. And seniors are in the Portsmouth Public School, Boys and Girls Clubs in the Robert Meek Public School, et cetera, et cetera. The point is we have a relationship with them, but this motion is about formalizing that, enhancing and maximizing the opportunities that could come from this relationship. It comes in a context where democratic changes are putting pressure on schools and the possibility of neighborhood communities being affected by school closing, and the way it affects local economic development, such as downtown, but it'll come to a neighborhood near you too, given the way we're going. And these are all public assets. They're all owned by the same taxpayer. So, what I'm saying out of this is the city would be getting, what could they get out of this? So it could get securing long-term public and recreational and green space that is already paid for by the public. There could be densification. There may well be, with densification, we may need to preserve these spaces in an effective tax-saving functional way into the future, so they'll be available for reinvention in the future. Supplies inside and outside spaces for near-term use for economic, social, and cultural purposes. The school board would help them assist in maintaining community schools, keeping a school open with smaller footprint, possibly broker other community partnerships for social services, micro-business space, community use whereby rents and cash flow may be generated where ordinarily no cash flow would be forthcoming. So there are benefits and opportunities on all sides. What we haven't done is formalize that and make it into, as this proposed working group, to see what we can do for the public and for citizens, for taxpayers, in utilizing and maximizing the use of these public assets. And personally, I've always looked at this space and thought, well, first of all, we could open community public schools, but we could also have space for micro businesses by closing off part of the school and utilizing that public space. It's already paid for, and we have to somebody has to maintain it, but it's not necessarily any good use or any proposal that's going to work, or sometimes not good use. So I think we should explore it, and we should ask the school board if they are willing to, discuss these issues so that we can move forward in a more coherent and effective way. And so that's my reasons for asking you to vote for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. We will call the vote. Oh, Councillor George.
Thank you, Worship. Just a couple. Number one, I'm just wondering, was there consideration to the Catholic School Board as well with the facilities they may have available? Because you're only speaking to the Limestone District School Board, if I'm reading this correctly. And number two, when you take a look at the report that we had just not too long ago outlining all the ongoing projects, all the work that we have staff currently doing, have staff discuss this with the mover or the seconder, and do they feel that they can meet this time frame? Because the matrix we had just recently that we took a look at, there was an awful lot of work ongoing there, and I just don't know how much we continue to pile on.
So I'll let Councillor Hutchison respond to the first question, and then I'll look to staff to answer the second. Councillor Hutchison.
Thank you, Worship. But that's a good question. And my inclination was to include the Algonquin Catholic School Board. It was led by different aspects, and if somebody wanted to make a motion to include them, to invite them, I'm completely fine with that. My just sort of talking around with people, I got the impression that they're much further flung board, going way north and east and west, and with many different considerations, and it seemed to me they might not be so interested at this point in time, and that they would maybe be invited in later. But if somebody wants to make a motion to include them, I have no problem. We can change the acronym. I don't really care. You know, it can be the whatever the heck it is, the Kingston, school board working group. I don't really care. Because it's the general idea of how we can better utilize our public assets that I'm mostly concerned about. And in fact, I would support anybody's motion to change it. I'm not in a position.
Is there someone from staff that can comment?
To answer the question, from a staff perspective, in terms of the regular basis and from time to time, if they do participated.
Your worship, is if I have a seconder is programs ongoing throughout the community as a whole, so them to participate if they choose.
Yeah, I don't think that this should be a friendly. So the amendment is to add after the word Lakeshore Catholic District School Board to establish a joint Kingston School Board Advisory Working Group.
Sure.
Okay. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Holland.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there anybody that wishes to speak to the amendment only? Councillor or Deputy Mayor Neal.
Yes, I'm in favor of the amendment. It's a good addition because the Algonquins School Board are also absolutely right. They're farther along. It's elementary school closures, but they have a number of properties that border on city properties that might indeed be a suitable or a possible site for the public board to find a remedy for their high school dilemma. And so having them at the table, even though they may not have the same needs as Limestone Board, I think makes sense because they can add to the process, I would believe. So I think an invitation for them to be represented makes perfect sense.
Anyone else to the amendment? Councillor McLaren.
Thank you. School boards to this working group is to actually ask them all, and just by coincidence, it seems, I believe the CSA, closer ties, it might be wise to the Catholic School Board, and have received a bit of a cold response. It would be to their benefit as well. Thank you.
But I would support that amendment. Thank you.
For lack of a better term, could quickly become a beast. We have just no idea how many people suddenly we're going to have sitting around the table. And my personal view is always that working groups are best when they're very small. We've already heard comments from staff about how there's good communication between staff levels. I'm not necessarily opposed to some political input, but without understanding exactly just too big of an animal. Again, this is not be just to deal with this. Both the chair of the Catholic School Board and the Director of Education over the next couple of weeks. I'm happy to pitch the idea to them at that point to see if there would be some interest, and then we could talk whether it would be good to have some other increased communication between council and the school board, if they'd be interested in integrating into this working group. Of course, we're not giving them that option at this point, whether there is, if it's wise to have everyone at the same table or whether it's better to have different conversations. So I just think that we are doing too much here tonight at 5 after 10 in the evening. I just think that it's better to keep our options open, so I'm going to be voting against the amendment. Thank you. If I can have the chair back.
You may.
That's great. Thank you. Anybody else to the amendment?
Yes.
KS. And that carries by a vote of 10 to 3. On the motion as amended, Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Your Worship. I support the motion, mainly because I know that it's something that the Limestone Board would also like to see. I do have some concerns with it, however. I think we've seen this play out fairly recently when you get political representatives involved who have a very local interest. I think it can potentially cause unintended consequences. And there are effects in this case. If the mandate of the working group is to find efficiencies, for example, in the use of public land, I think that there could potentially be situations where finding those efficiencies where there are benefits or challenges that are felt locally. And I would just really like to know that the people involved in the working group would be very conscious of that fact. And to that end, in a way, I think the input of staff is really essential here. We've alluded to the fact that city staff and school board staff have worked together very well fairly recently with the Rideau Heights project in finding those efficiencies and benefits. And so I just would like to point out that members of the working group should be conscious of the goal of finding that we are referring to.
Councillor Bone.
With this would actually be a time frame and perhaps about how CLOG will be a make work program on, and there's no information about the structure that possibly attain, so it could just keep growing and kind of become more than we can actually ever handle or possibly deal with.
Commissioner Hurdle.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. That's a difficult question to answer when you haven't been involved, obviously, in any of the discussions that took place in regards to this motion. So I think from a staff perspective, what we would obviously want to do is we would want to narrow and really get the group focused, because yes, if I read this motion, it could be broad. I probably could have 2 full-time staff. And I think specific projects have worked really well. And the age-friendly working group was a very good example of one that had a specific mandate project, completed it, and was able to move on in terms of the next phase. So I think that's what we would bring back to council, and hopefully that fits with the intent of this motion.
Okay, thank you. So basically, if I understand that correctly, so supporting this right now would not necessarily create this kind of large working group that could kind of just spin out of control, but we would actually be able to sort of have another look at what staff brings back, if I understood that correctly.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's what we would bring back to council, and that would be our recommendation.
Thank you.
Councillor Schell.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. I guess what's confusing me is, from what I'm hearing, staff were not part of this original motion. We're directing staff to create a recommendation about how something will be structured that staff really will be inventing, because they weren't part of the original discussion, that they weren't actually consulted when this was created. Is that correct?
Commissioner Hurdle.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's correct.
If I were staff, I wouldn't know where to start. This is so broad. I feel I can't support this. It's just too broad. And we're taking what seems to be a huge whereas clause, may include but not limited to, and then asking staff to refine it into a recommendation of how we're going to, how staff are going to make it happen. I feel like there's a whole step missing in this, and I won't be supporting it. I certainly support the idea, as we already have been seeing, that staff work with the Limestone School Board, particularly on more specific items, as in Rideau Heights, to do with recreation centers, with a community center. We have specific goals in mind. This is so broad. I think it might dilute the whole work that staff does currently with the school board. Except I like the direction of it, but I just feel it's too broad as something that then staff has to figure out what to do with it. So I'd love a try again, but not with this one. Thank you.
Councillor Stroud.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree with Councillor Schell, and I think that maybe we need to think about this a bit more, and so I move to defer this motion, understanding that that will delay it, but we need to hear from a really broad motion, especially now that the both school boards are involved, and so I think we need more time, and so I move to defer.
Okay, deferral to, say, time and place, so back to council, but at a particular...
Third council meeting.
Seconder? Deputy Mayor?
Yes. Can I ask if there was...
So motion to be consultation with the mover. And debate on the motion to defer is on. Call the vote. We have no more motions. This is a motion.
Forgetting concerning the casino. 27, 2014, the public indicated 32.91% that they do not. Therefore, be it resolved and the official plan and the zoning bylaws to no. Seconded by Councillor McLaren.
To the minutes of the City Council meeting, National Council meeting number 20.
And that carries. Number of communications. Any other business? Mr. Clerk will ask for bylaws.
Moved by Councillor Allen, seconded by Councillor Turner, that bylaws 1 through 7 and 9 be given their first and second reading.
Please vote. And that carries.
Moved by Councillor Osanik, seconded by Councillor Holland, that bylaws 1 through 10 be given their third reading.
Please vote. Please vote. And that carries. Thank you very much.